As an engineer, we probably faced problems that were super frustrating to solve, like code that breaks for no clear reason, bugs that seem impossible to fix, systems that behave in ways you didn't expect, infrastructure issues that you were troubleshooting for days. Or if you are an entrepreneur, do you remember the phase of starting your business and getting it off the ground, or trying to find a product market fit, or figure out how email marketing works? All very challenging problems to solve. When these moments happen, it's so frustrating. It feels like you are stuck and circling around the same problem without making any progress for hours or days. And it's very tempting to look for an easier task to switch to walk away from the current challenge and work on something easier, because you are yearning for those wins and the small success feelings, like you've accomplished something. So you fix some easy bug that you already know how to solve, or buy office supply for your business, like that's gonna have a large impact. And it's fine to take a break and get those small wins in and get back to the hard thing. But what we do instead is we avoid those hard tasks like a plague, because we try to avoid that frustrating feeling and we dread them and we procrastinate even when we know that those tasks are important to do. But here's the question: what if those tough problems are actually the best opportunities you'll ever have to grow? So instead of stressing about getting an outcome from them, what if we start seeing them as the best training for our mind that can literally make us smarter, so that we develop our analytical thinking, our ability to solve hard problems, and learn the most exactly in those moments when we're wrestling with these tough problems. So basically, we focus on the process, not the outcome. Becoming aware that in that process, we're building the skills that most of our peers never develop because they avoid such challenging tasks. Let me tell you my story. I was a software engineer and I was tasked to set up and configure a complex platform where applications would run. Now, I had no idea how that would work in practice, and no one in the company had any idea either. So I was like an explorer on my own, going on an untracked path, and had to figure out from scratch how to tackle this really hard project. And by the way, I was asked to confirm whether I actually wanted to do it and whether I was up for the task. And I remember exactly my thought process. I thought, if I do this, I will become an engineer with probably one of the most valuable knowledge in this huge company. This platform will be used by almost every team around me, so I will become a go-to engineer, the main contact person for all the others. That is a big pressure, but it's also an amazing and respectable position to be in, right? I was new, so I wanted to just prove myself. Plus, I knew that this tech stack that I was about to learn and work with was becoming super highly demanded globally. So I would be one of the few engineers in the entire world who would be an expert in this. I was a freelancer, so I thought, who knows what kind of opportunities open up for me with this new skill set. Then I thought, what if I fail? What would happen then? Well, everybody in the team thinks that this is a very complex task, so no one's gonna blame me for not managing to get it right immediately or perfectly. And I'm sure that I can make some progress if I work on this with full focus, like I can get something off the ground. So there was very little downside and a huge upside. The only question was I ready to endure a complete brain twist for a long period of time? And I decided, yes, I will do it. So after the meeting was over, I walk over to my desk, I open my laptop, I take a deep breath, and I think, I have no idea where to start, but I will figure it out. One small step at a time, just bit by bit. So what followed was 10 months of cognitively the most challenging project of my whole engineering career. And having tight deadlines and constant pressure of adding configurations that various teams around me needed definitely didn't make it easier. You remember I mentioned the untracked path? Well, every time I was researching something online, I would encounter the same questions I had, but no answers. I literally had to test out every possible option with trial and error because there were no blueprints of answers online from engineers who had figured it out. It was a new technology, so I was one of the first few people basically working on it. I remember I had this one task to configure logging system in this Kubernetes platform that I was building. So taking a bundle of tools, installing and configuring it in the cluster in a way that hundreds of other services could connect to it and use it in a unified way. I spent the entire week figuring out how to even approach this task and just learning these concepts. I couldn't get anywhere. I was more confused after a week of research than I was when I started. So I decided, okay, let's take a step back and start from scratch. I started documenting every single step I was testing out in a textual format. I would literally write. I took these configuration files and tried to install logging services with it. It didn't work because the log collector couldn't connect to the Elasticsearch database, so no information was saved there. I tried to troubleshoot with these steps and change this configuration and this connection string with this and that parameter. That didn't work. Then I changed this. It also didn't work. Now I'm uninstalling everything and using this other configuration instead, and so on for weeks. Meanwhile, my manager and my team were asking daily, so Nana, what's the status? Can we use logging already? All our services and teams are waiting for logging to be implemented. And oh, by the way, we also want this and these features from logging. Can you also add that to your list of to-dos, please? And here's the fun part. The progress was not linear. It was not that I was getting closer with every day of work. It was like treading water for 2 weeks for one small breakthrough. So after a month, I finally managed to get it up, to get logging installed, up and running and usable. And I realized I had not only learned how to do that one task, but I had learned millions of details about logging, networking, databases, various concepts and tools in depth within a short period of time. Now, before I could breathe out, I was given a task to configure storage and data persistence in the cluster. I will spare you the details, but that was another hardcore project with the same kind of workflow. Now, there was another side effect of working on these challenging tasks every day for months. I learned general strategies and skills of breaking down complex tasks that I was given into smaller pieces. I learned how to dig through layers of complexity and test potential solutions until something clicked. And that skill itself made each following task easier, and it definitely increased my confidence every time. So when I was given the next challenging task, I was up for the challenge because I was like, I have solved those things in the past. It can't be any harder than the previous ones. So I had built a track record of continuously figuring out something no matter how hard it was. So by the end of the project, I had become the go-to Kubernetes expert on my team. Other team leads would come to me for advice because they also wanted to implement this technology. I became extremely valuable and knowledgeable because I was willing to work on these super hard problems for a long period of time. So after 10 months, I became the expert not only in Kubernetes platform, but tons of other tools that I worked on in the context of Kubernetes. But guess what? The dividends did not stop there. When I finished the project, exhausted mentally, but happy and proud of myself that I managed to actually do it, I thought to myself, why don't I teach these complex tools to others? Because I knew I have a skill for teaching and explaining complex tech topics. So what better topic to teach than this crazy complex tool and all the ecosystem of tools around it? After 4 years from the decision, we have more than 1 million subscribers on YouTube, over 200,000 on LinkedIn, and that video on Kubernetes that I recorded back then, right at the beginning of the channel, has over 9 million views. And on the back of it, I also built $1 million business as well. All of this based on those 10 months of working intensively on hard problems, having frustrations, mentally pushing every single day, not knowing whether I'm stuck or actually making any progress. All that was the foundation of what I achieved later. Remember, I mentioned the side effect of building a skill of tackling hard problems? Well, I used the same problem-solving skills that I learned by tackling these challenging engineering tasks in my business. I needed to figure out how to build a global online business. I had no idea, no plan, never done this before, but I said, I can figure it out. It literally can't be more difficult than setting up an entire Kubernetes cluster from scratch. Now, I want to grow our business to 8 figures. No idea how I'm going to do that, absolutely no plan, but also no problem, because I know I will figure it out as I have figured out all the other challenging tasks in the past. Because I wasn't scared of the challenges, I pushed through it and I gained the confidence and I built a track record that if I stay with it long enough, eventually I will have a breakthrough. And that's how it always has worked. So I go through the same exact experience in business as in engineering, where I sit through the task for weeks without feeling any progress. And I know this is how it's supposed to be because of my past experiences, because my past experiences tell me that at some point there will be an inevitable breakthrough, and there always is if you stick to it long enough. So what does it really mean to work on hard problems? Working on hard problems means going beyond just scratching the surface. It's not just about getting things done and checking them off the list. It's about really pushing your brain to the limits to solve the things that feel unsolvable or super, super challenging that other people usually do not want to touch. Most people stop when they hit a wall. They think, you know what, I've been working on this for hours. I can't figure this out right now. I'll come back to it later. But when later comes, they rarely bring the same focus or energy, or they just postpone it, they just delay it, or at some point they don't even do it. So they never go deep enough to fully understand and solve that challenging task. Now ask yourself this: when was the last time you spent 10 hours straight working on a problem? What about 5 days or 2 weeks of thinking deeply about one specific challenge? Again, for engineers, this might mean debugging some really difficult problem, researching beyond surface level documentation, or testing 100 different solutions. For entrepreneurs, it could mean figuring out why your marketing isn't working, designing a product that truly solves the customer's problem, or hiring the right team members. If you only skim the surface, you will miss the insights that lead to the real value. Now think about every time you try to just check things off the list and move on to the next one. This is shallow work, which is about doing just the bare minimum to check off something from your list or get something done and then move on. It's also the kind of work that anyone can do and can easily be replaced by automation or AI. Now think about your brain like a muscle. When you're at the gym and your muscles start burning and hurting, that's actually when the growth happens. And it's the same thing with your mind. Most people, when they feel their muscles hurt, and I've done this a lot when working out, that's exactly when we stop. It's like, oh, I'm feeling it in the muscles already. I can't do any more reps. But that's exactly where you need to continue just for a bit longer. That's where the most gains are made, the most exponential gains in that extra few reps. And with your brain is the same thing. When you feel you can't think anymore, you've been working on this task and thinking about it for hours on end or for days, and you feel like you're basically stuck. That's exactly when you need to go that extra step and go a little bit deeper, because that's where you have all the context and information loaded in your memory and you have really warmed up your brain. So you just need a little bit more for that big breakthrough. And for those of you who think, I'm not smart enough to work on hard problems, it's actually the other way around. you become smarter by working on challenging problems. Because think about it, if you're physically weak, do you say, I'm weak and therefore I can't go to the gym and work out? I don't have the strength. Well, you would go to the gym in order to get stronger, right? And you do that by training daily until you're not weak anymore. It's the same thing with your brain. You become smarter by thinking and working on harder problems. Because working on hard problems doesn't only help you to solve that specific problem, but it also teaches and trains your brain in critical thinking, in analytical reasoning, in breaking down the complexity into simpler layers. And it makes your brain just much more agile and fast in general. And then you can use that brain power that you've gained in all other areas of your life. Now, one important thing to consider here is, do you just choose any random hard problem to work on? Or is it worth it using all of your brain power and capacity on any challenging task? That's an important point. Not all hard problems are worth your time. If you don't find a problem meaningful or interesting, it's going to be really difficult to stay focused and give it the intense mental effort that it requires. I liked working on this engineering project that I mentioned, and I saw a direct correlation of learning these tech skills and succeeding in my career long term. I didn't even think it would help me build a global IT company, but I knew that it would have some kind of positive impact. And I also love working on business problems that I know will grow and expand our business. So I see a direct correlation in tackling and solving this problem and having this tremendous impact on the other side. So choosing the right hard problem is probably just as important as solving it. So look for problems that align with your interests and goals, that spark your curiosity, and you know that will have a clear impact. Because when you're working on something that feels meaningful, you won't have to rely on sheer willpower or discipline. It will feel much more natural to dive in and give it your full attention. Now, you will still require some level of discipline. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be 100 times easier because you actually find meaning and purpose in that work. Now, I always like to end my videos with some kind of actionable next steps. So if you're an engineer or an entrepreneur, I see a lot of commonalities there. Here is what you can do right away. First of all, identify work that excites you. Scan through your projects that you're working on now and identify the challenging tasks among them which are meaningful for you and will have a big impact. And use that as your next big challenge. And just challenge yourself to work on it for at least a few months until you have solved it. Second one is, do not stop when you hit the wall. When you hit a point where you don't know what to do, that's where you know you need to keep going. You need to push through. That's your opportunity to learn how to actually figure out those difficult, challenging things which seem unsolvable. And that's your opportunity to learn and grow the most. Remember, that's exactly where most people would stop and turn around and jump on the next simpler task. But this is exactly the point where you just have to keep going. Third one, and this is a very practical one, immerse yourself in that specific project. You build a momentum by immersing yourself daily into the topic of whatever problem you are solving. Whether you are making progress or not, keep learning, keep researching, keep trying out stuff, because even if you don't see a tangible result, you have to understand that every time you learn something new, every time you research something new or try something and figure out whether it works or not, you actually have got one step closer to solving that problem. And the fun thing is that the deeper you go, the more interesting it will become for you. Number 4 is focus on process, not progress. What do I mean by that? Focus on building skills and the mental strength, training the brain like a muscle. Do not focus on what outcome you are getting, because it's not a linear progress. You work on it daily without any visible progress until you have sudden breakthrough. So you most likely won't be seeing progress at the beginning and a tangible outcome, but you know behind the scenes that it's piling up for that breakthrough moment. And I will leave you with this insight. The ability to work on hard problems isn't something you were born with, it's something you develop over time. All the smart, brilliant people that you see, they weren't born brilliant. They developed their raw talent by putting in the effort. Elon Musk has spent years of drilling in on hard problems. Thomas Edison had 10,000 failed attempts of creating a light bulb. Nobody's brilliant effortlessly because it takes a lot of effort and work to seem like you are effortlessly smart and brilliant. So if you put in the effort, you will develop the skills and knowledge that are rare and valuable. I know this is challenging, but this is exactly how you build expertise and a very strong, lasting career.